Notre Dame, Ohio State. Number right now, Ohio State minus 8.5. As we look at it, I talked all week. I've heard you talk a little bit about this too. It is my belief that Notre Dame needs a path in this game where 20 points or so wins for them. Now, everyone automatically goes to, oh, you think they need to win the turnover battle. Well, I would love for them to win the turnover battle. But if you go even in the turnover battle, but you turn them away on downs a few times in the red zone, you make them go on some fruitless drives, or you just hurry Will Howard up to the point where his passing numbers are like 16 for 36 or something like that, and you've just forced the issue, and maybe you found a couple of explosive plays, or maybe special teams is something that not showing up in the box score, but it was a decisive win for you. Like, the number's 8.5, not 28.5. So I know it seems like this tall mountain to clear, and I did pick Ohio State to win the game, but when I try and present the other side, not to mention, I don't want to overlook what you just said about the team aspect of this. Like what their heartbeat is, it's kind of like taking a shotgun and trying to fire it into a school of mackerel. You're not hitting any one. I can look at some of these other teams. They are star-driven, and if you shut this guy down, you shut the entire team down. Notre Dame's not been that. That's the biggest compliment I could give them, by the way, because they are beat to death. They have been all year, and they're still playing for a title, and there was no easy way to get there for them because they had to play an extra game. They could not get a first-round bye. So what is the path you see? Like, what's the most likely way you see this thing going?
Yeah, I think kind of where you're going that I would agree with is that it is going to have to be a certain style of game. And Notre Dame has gotten or forced their opponents into that game in 11 of 12 quarters in this playoff. The fourth quarter against Penn State would be the only one that really wasn't that. And that is methodical, grind it out, make you work, make life difficult, not come up with a ton of plays like that. And then win on special teams, win with field position, win with time of possession, keep staying on the field, great on third down, run the football, slow the run down, get to the quarterback. Those are the things that are going to have to happen. And there just aren't a ton of areas, Josh, when you start to line these two teams up against each other. And no, I'm not going to do the old school Auburn Plainsman where we go down and check a box for quarterback or check a box for running back or check a box for tight end, because what's more important there, I think, is actually those teams facing off against one another position by position. So the O-line versus the D-line, the DBs versus the receivers. It can't be turned into a score fest. It can't turn into a track meet. It can't be that style football game. But if Notre Dame can slow it down and they can force Ohio State to work their way down the field, and like you said, you get a couple of incompletions. Maybe you get a missed field goal attempt. Maybe you get going forward on fourth down a couple of times and you don't come up with it. That's the game that they need. I do think if there's an advantage for Notre Dame to be had, it's right there with their defensive line against Ohio State's offensive line. But I still do believe that that has to be one that situationally is advantageous for Notre Dame. If they're allowing Ohio State to live in 2nd and 4, 3rd and 1, 2nd and 3s, where they can just line up and run the football, I don't think that's where Notre Dame needs to be in this game, mainly because of the depth in that offensive line and that front seven. But if they get them 2nd, 3rd, and longs, obvious passing downs, we know they can play great in man coverage. So if you can get to the quarterback before longer developing routes take place, that's a pretty big advantage. Offensively, you have to have an answer for that defensive line. And I think maybe more important in this game, have an answer for Caleb Downs because of where he lines up. It is I call it like an old school 4-3 apex defense. If you were to move Caleb Downs up about 8 yards, it would look like your old school 4-3 defense. 4 down linemen, 1, 2, 3 linebackers. Like when I played football, every single defense in America lined up in for about 80% of the game. But he's backed up about 8 yards, and he can be a safety, a linebacker. He can rove around. He can move to the line of scrimmage. We saw him on that toss sweep near the goal line where he just knifes through and he goes and makes that play. He's going to steal balls in the middle of the field. He's going to mess with your eyes when you're trying to play the middle of the field. He's going to make you think you have a numbers advantage, and you don't have that numbers advantage. So having an answer for where he is and what he's going to be doing on most plays, I think is almost as important as dealing with that defensive line, which really nobody has done so far in this playoff.
Were you of the opinion over the past, call it 10 or 15 years, that the sport of college football had just sort of begun to evolve in a way that was going to leave Notre Dame in the rearview mirror as it related to national championship contention? Because I had slipped into that. When I watched what it was going to take to beat Alabama or to beat Clemson or to beat a Georgia, I never thought they'd have the athletes again to do it. With the way that recruiting and talent acquisition had become in college football and the disadvantages, as I saw them, that they were working with, I never thought they'd put this together again. And they're 4 quarters away from a national title. And to be honest, man, even if they don't win it Monday night, I feel like they've got plenty of staying power. If anything, now the sport is coming back towards them in terms of a formula that can sustainably win. Did you feel that way? Like, I know a lot of folks started to feel that way.
There's no doubt. I don't know how you couldn't unless you were just wearing, navy and gold or green glasses and you looked at it through Irish eyes, because when they played Clemson in the college football playoff, that Clemson team literally just ran past them. It was like go ball, fade, throw deep, guy can't cover me, jump, catch it, run past him, touchdown. And then they couldn't block them very well either. We know what happened when they played Alabama at the end of the BCS era, and it was literally run through you. What will you do about it? You can't do anything about it. And that was where I thought, man, this team just strength-wise, size-wise, athleticism-wise, speed-wise, everybody else is leaving them behind, leaving them in the dust. And all we talked about, Josh, for years were the disadvantages that you brought up that Notre Dame was going to face. If it's Marcus Freeman, maybe it's some of the administration, maybe it's some people around him. They have found how to flip that script a little bit and take advantage of some of the things that other schools don't have to deal with. Like, I kind of laughed at the whole, we don't have a conference championship game, so that'll be our bye week, and then we'll get a home game in the first round of the playoffs. I'm never going to get off of the seat of more playoff games on your path to a championship is easier or better, because it's just not. But there are some inherent advantages that lie with Notre Dame there. Being able to schedule the way you want to, being able to play who you want to, when you want to, with how you put your schedules together and what Jack Swarbrick did for a long time, I think is a massive advantage for Notre Dame also. And then we know how the revenue sharing is going to go with their media rights deal and then with them in the postseason also. So I think we've taken some of these things that we looked at, the academic issues and this, that, whatever. These high school kids are so far ahead of the academic curve the majority of the time now. And specifically when they get to college, a lot of them have taken college credits. They want to graduate as quickly as they can because they want to be on the move and be able to go somewhere else if that presents itself. So that's behind us. I mean, that's prehistoric now to worry about a lot of those things and for that to work against you. And I also think Marcus Freeman is recruiting the way Notre Dame needs to be recruited. When I was coming out of school, at least the perception was that Notre Dame just picked and chose like the high profile players from each corner of the country. Like they'd go to California and they'd get Corey Minor, and then they go up to New Jersey and they get a running back, and then they go down to Miami and get a quarterback. And it was just the guys that Super Prep had the front of the magazine and that everybody seemed to want. It wasn't really looking for fit. It wasn't really looking for personality. It wasn't really looking for makeup. And I think Marcus Freeman takes that into account and is very serious about that. Because if you're not a certain kind of guy, you're not going to come play on his team. Otherwise, how would they overcome these injuries this year? You got to be a certain kind of person to not have played snap all year and then step in and be the guy and play well right away. I think he's taking a different approach from a practice perspective. I think his 2s and 3s get more reps than most do at any other school in the country. So there are a lot of things that he has brought in that are helping Notre Dame either catch up or go ahead and get ahead of the curve, where you and I both believe they were way behind it maybe 8 years ago.
The whole swing of emotion for Ohio State, if they win this thing, they're favored to. If they win this thing Monday night, the swing that you take yourself from losing to Michigan and what you had to have felt like to winning a championship, and the fact that in college football now that stuff can happen in the same year. The closest I can do is I can ask you to go back to losing an Iron Bowl and imagining that the structure of college football was such that you could lose that thing in your home building and you don't play for a conference title or anything, but the structure grants you access to the playoff. Then you get hot, you go on a run, and you win it. And the worst feeling competitively you could ever have and the best feeling competitively you could ever have normally would have been reserved for different seasons of your life. Now they're like a month and a half apart. I don't know if that's ever going to be a norm, because that's pretty extreme. But it's a possibility now. And that could actually be a reality for Ohio State in, 4 days, I guess, which I still don't think I've fully come to terms with.
Well, also, let's look back at that schedule that you just put up, and one that we sort of laughed at for the majority of the season. Now there's going to be, if they win this game Monday night, there's going to be 5 playoff wins on that schedule. And they were able to avenge the loss at Oregon. So you get the Big Ten champions again in the playoff. Tennessee, obviously, and then you have Indiana and Penn State that you both knocked off, and you win Notre Dame. So 5 playoff wins out of 12 teams, and you were one of them. So 11, like that's pretty impressive. So that went from a schedule that we all looked at and said, well, you've coasted. You haven't even been on neutral. I mean, you've literally been on your hands and knees through the first 4 weeks of the season. And then, yeah, you played a couple of tough teams, and then you got to one team that might be in the playoffs. You lost the game that you probably needed to win to show everybody how good you were, to a pretty immaculate run in this postseason, coming off of a loss to your rival, which wasn't a great football team this year. So all I can say is that Ryan Day would be that guy. And really the guy that you and I think I and some other folks have thought that he was, because we've never complained. We've never asked for him to be gone. There were things that I thought were lacking on this football team for a while. However it happened, whatever players only meeting, whatever guys like having to come to Jesus, it has happened and it has taken place. And there's a lot of dudes that are playing at their full potential at a much more consistent basis now than they have, not only at the any point of this season, but the any point of the last 3, 4, 5 seasons.